All my years on the run, chasing hell, drinking devil's blood. I never caught a fire that could ever slow me down. Even fighting in the war, dodging lead, breaching rival doors. I never took no heat that could ever strike me down. Oh, when I come home, glory, hallelujah.
So, welcome back. Welcome back to Unfiltered with Christopher, the podcast where we strip away the bullshit and talk about real life. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that life does not give you blueprints, right? You either build something for yourself or you get buried under the weight of what's been done to you. In the last episode, we talked about breaking the chains, cutting off what's been holding you back. But here's the truth: breaking free is only the first step. What comes next is even harder: rebuilding. I know I know what it's like to be left standing in just in the wreckage, right? In just chaos. I know what it's like to look around and see nothing but shattered pieces of your life that you thought you had. You know, your past decisions, your mistakes, the people who walked away, and all the piles like that it just builds up until you feel like there's no way forward. But what if I told you that the rubble of the past can be a foundation for something even greater? And that's what this episode is going to be about: how to rebuild brick by brick from the ruins. This episode is called Rebuilding from Rubble. Because when life burns everything to the ground, you only have two choices, right? Two. You either stay in the ashes or you start rebuilding. And trust me, I've made both choices. I've been there, I've done that. So if you're feeling lost, and if you've had your identity stripped away, if you don't know who the hell you are anymore, this episode is definitely for you. So let's get into it.
Me on down. All my days in the woods, just a blade and a point to prove. I never picked a fight that could ever put me down. Oh, but when I come home, glory, hallelujah. Oh, your love had a way of knocking me on down.
So let's get into it, shall we? So in episode 6, we talked about the downward spiral, right? The breaking point where everything collapsed, um, where I just spun apart. And episode 7 was about breaking the chains. It was about cutting ties with the past, and now we're taking that next step. So what comes after that? What comes after that for me? It wasn't just one rock bottom moment. Like, it was a long road of painful realizations. The military, for all the structure it gave me, had also taken parts away from me, that I would never get back. My second marriage, the one that I thought was my chance of stability, had instead left me with wounds deeper than any battlefield ever could, than any childhood trauma ever could. And then there was my own self-inflicted wounds, the habits and the distractions that kept me numb, right? And that moment of clarity, that moment I knew I had to start making different choices, not just for myself, but for my kids. That's what this episode is. It's how to take those first painful steps forward, even when everything in you wants to quit. You just want to be done. And especially if you're blue collar or you're military affiliated or military, you know what that is. Like you know how that goes. You know you can just be going and your body just wants to quit. If you've ever pushed yourself like that, you you know. So facing my addictions, and I also had obsessions, right? I had an obsession with social media. And here's the hard truth: before I could rebuild, I had to come face to face with my own self-destruction. I wasn't just broken from my past. I was just actively making it worse. I just wasn't trying to better myself at all. I was binge drinking. I was drowning out the pain. I told myself that it was just blowing off steam, right? I was just taking the edge off. But deep down, I knew I was using alcohol to escape from everything that I didn't want to deal with. It was an alternate reality, right? Um, I'd find that I'd be happier drinking because I wasn't in reality, and that's sad. But then there was social media, man. I was addicted, like not just to scrolling, but to the validation, to the attention, to the numbers. I mean, I built a following of almost 80,000 people on TikTok, and you'd think that would make me feel something, right? Accomplished, worthy. Nah, no. The more likes I got, the emptier I felt because it wasn't real. That wasn't reality. That was just another addiction that I had. The mo- It was like the more likes I got, the emptier I felt because it wasn't real. Like it just wasn't fixing anything. And it was just another way that I could avoid looking in the mirror, looking at myself and realizing that I was the problem, looking at myself and saying, "You are the problem. You need to fix this." No, I was just getting validation for everything that I was doing from other people that didn't really give a fuck about me. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you more than you. And that's something, especially being in the military, that I've learned over the last 15 years is like, I care. How do I say this? I know that my leaders care about me, but they're going to prioritize their careers, their families, their lives first. Yes, sure. We get out on the battlefield. You have to prioritize, the battle, right? You have to prioritize your people. But when it comes down to real life, real day-to-day situations, nobody gives a fuck about you more than you do. But I had to cut it all off, right? I had to let it go. And let me tell you, that was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But I wanted to rebuild, and I couldn't keep living for the distractions. I had to start living for myself. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. You guys know my childhood. I didn't I didn't have a childhood. I didn't live for myself. I lived to keep my siblings alive, um, to enable my parents to get their fucking goddamn their income tax returns so they could get $10,000 in parties, so they could get their, you know, $1,200 in food stamps and sell it for 50 cents on the dollar so that they could afford their fucking dime bag, right? Like shit. It's wild. I never lived for myself until here recently. Um, I mean, I've always known that I've had addictions and I've had like obsessions, right? I always knew that. I just never understood the extent that that it pushed me to, I guess. And I never understood and never saw how it was ruining my life and ruining who I am. But that's where I am. So, step one, step one is letting the fire burn, right? We're rebuilding. Rebuilding means letting go of the old. Even when it's painful, too many people try to rebuild their lives while still holding onto the wreckage, right? They try to patch up broken relationships. They try to replaying the past. They live in the what ifs instead of facing the what is. What is where we're at today. The shit that happened yesterday is fucking nothing. It's in the past. Leave it there. Move on. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you more than you, and nobody can shape your future or tomorrow more than you. You decide how you feel. You decide what you're going to do, and you decide to have that good day. But listen, you can't build something on top of just ruins, right? You have to let the fires burn. You know, for everybody it's different, but For me, that meant accepting that my past wasn't going to change. I wasn't going to wake up one day and suddenly have a family that wanted me. I wasn't getting to undo the mistakes that I've made in the military, in my own self-destructive paths. You know, I did something then that I never thought I'd do. I just stopped fighting it. Quit fighting it. Stop chasing the people who don't want you. Stop trying to fix things that aren't yours to fix, that weren't mine to fix. I stopped making excuses for the way people treated me. And yeah, it hurt like hell. It felt like giving up, right? Like in reality, that was my first step towards rebuilding. I had to clear the rubble before I could start laying that new foundation. You can't build a house on sand, right? I mean, I guess you can, but y'all understand what I'm saying, you know? But once you let go, then you start rebuilding with a purpose, right? You're left with an empty slate. And yes, it's terrifying. But here's the thing. You decide what comes next. It's an empty blackboard, you know? You got your chalk these days we got our whiteboard and our markers, right? We're deciding what we're putting on there, you know? But for me, the biggest part, the biggest part of rebuilding, uh, it's my wife Elizabeth. For almost 3 years ago, while I was still in that fight, I met my wife to be. And let me tell you, meeting her changed everything for me. She saw me for who I was, and she saw that I was still at war with myself. She didn't just see the broken parts, the battle scars, the damage. She saw me and who I am. And so, the greatest day ever, you know, we got married last year. Last year on Leap Day, right? It's coming up. First anniversary. Yep. But since then, I've found the most honest and true version of myself. You know, for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't have to run. I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to mask who I was with alcohol or a face on social media. I didn't have to pretend anything other than exactly who I am. And I don't know where I would be today without her. That's what rebuilding really is about. It, it's not about healing the past, it's about building the future. And you don't have to do it alone. So, if you're standing in the rubble of your life right now, hear me when I say this. You can build something. You can build something better, right? You can see how you built it before and adjust it. You know, you get to start over. You get to build something better and you can find your way out. And that starts today. That starts with this. And that's why you're here today. Whether you know it or not, whether I know it or not, that is why we're here. So let's do this. I love this song. Let me tell y'all.
Yeah, we were young and so alive. Now it feels like another life. So can you tell me a different story? 'Cause the one I got, it's getting old. We had all the time in the world, now I just need more. I just need more. We had all the time in the world, now I just need more. I just need more.
So thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Just keep paying attention. These songs, these episodes are going to get better and better. I'm really working on how to format them, how to edit them, and how to just give you guys the most information the quickest I can, so that you ain't wasting your days away. I know I've got a million things to do. I'm sure you got a million things to do, and nobody cares more about us than us, right? But with that note, we'll end this on a high note here. So, rebuilding isn't about finding the perfect version of yourself, it's about making peace with who you were, learning from it, and becoming someone stronger. So, if this episode spoke to you, it resonated with you, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe you have a friend that needs to hear it. Maybe it didn't resonate with you, but you know somebody that it could resonate with. Feel free to connect with me on social media. Um, the little I still use, I got some. But let me know your thoughts, right? And come join me on an episode. Give me some criticism on the episodes. Let me know how you feel. Let me know things I can improve. Let me know things that you want to hear about. Until then, until next time, stay strong and stay unfiltered. And I'll see you on the next one.
Take me down the desert roads. We crashed the car, getting stoned.